My father spent 20 years telling me the same story about that savings account. He said it was my wedding fund, something my mom started the year I turned 8 because she wanted to make sure I'd have a beautiful wedding one day, even if she wasn't there to see it. After she died, he moved the money into a savings account under his name because I was still a minor, but he promised me over and over that it would stay untouched until the day I needed it. So when I opened my banking app one afternoon to transfer the deposit for my wedding venue and the balance showed zero, I honestly thought the app had frozen. I refreshed it twice while standing in my kitchen with the afternoon sunlight coming through the window and hitting the screen of my phone. The number didn't change. $0. That's when I opened the transaction history and saw one transfer sitting there from 3 days earlier, one withdrawal, the entire account emptied in a single payment. And the description next to that transfer didn't say wedding vendor or bank correction or anything connected to my life. It said Ocean Crown Luxury Cruises, the exact cruise my father's new wife had been bragging about at dinner the week before. My mom started saving for my wedding the year I turned 8, which felt strange to me at the time because 8-year-olds don't think about weddings. They think about birthdays and summer break and whether their friends will come over after school. But she treated that little savings plan like it was something meaningful, something that belonged to my future even if I couldn't see it yet. I remember sitting at our kitchen table while she showed me the notebook where she wrote down every deposit in neat blue ink, explaining that every birthday check from relatives and every extra dollar she could spare was slowly building something that would matter someday. She passed away when I was 16, and after the funeral, my father sat me down in the living room and explained that he had moved the savings into an account under his name because it was easier to manage that way until I was older. At the time, I trusted him completely because he had always been careful with money, and he talked about the account like it was something sacred, something my mom had started and he intended to protect. Over the years, the subject came up occasionally during quiet conversations, usually when weddings happened in our extended family. He would mention the account almost proudly, like he had kept a promise alive for both of them. Things didn't really start to feel different until about 2 years ago when he remarried. His new wife wasn't rude exactly, but she liked expensive things in a way my mother never had. Designer bags, luxury hotels, the kind of vacations that come with glossy brochures, and price tags nobody mentions out loud at the dinner table. My father usually just smiled while she talked about those things, nodding along like he enjoyed seeing her excited. About a month before my wedding deposit was due, she started talking about a cruise she had always wanted to take, one of those long Mediterranean trips with private balconies and formal dinners every night. I remember the way she described it at Sunday dinner one evening, while my father sat quietly beside her, letting her do most of the talking. She said the cruise was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and the itinerary sounded incredible, but also expensive enough that most people would spend years saving for it. At the time, I smiled politely and congratulated them because it sounded like something exciting for them to enjoy together. I didn't think about the price or where the money might come from because it never crossed my mind that their dream vacation had anything to do with the savings my mother had spent years quietly building for my future. Standing in my kitchen now, with my phone still glowing in my hand and that empty account staring back at me, those dinner conversations suddenly replayed in my head in a completely different way. Because the cruise she had been describing with so much excitement was scheduled to leave in 4 days. If you want to see what happened next, stay with me. And if you like stories that reveal what people try to hide, don't forget to like and subscribe. At first, I convinced myself there had to be some kind of misunderstanding, because the idea that my father would empty that account without telling me felt almost impossible to believe. I called the bank, thinking maybe the transfer was temporary or part of some kind of processing delay that would reverse itself once someone reviewed it. The woman on the phone spoke calmly while she looked up the account history, confirming the date of the withdrawal and explaining that the transfer had been authorized in person at a branch location using my father's identification. When she finished explaining that detail, the quiet in my apartment felt heavier than anything she had said. I thanked her and ended the call, then sat down at my kitchen table, staring at the transaction record on my phone. Later that evening, curiosity turned into something closer to certainty when I opened the cruise company's website and started scrolling through their packages. It only took a few seconds before I found the exact trip my stepmother had been describing at dinner. Mediterranean route, 3 weeks, balcony suite for 2 passengers. I almost laughed when I saw the price because it matched the missing account balance almost perfectly, right down to the last few $100s. Around 8 that night, my father called to ask if I planned to come to dinner the following evening before they left for the cruise. His voice sounded relaxed and cheerful, like he was inviting me to celebrate something exciting with them. He explained that they had booked a table at a restaurant near the harbor where the ship would be docked, and said it would be nice to spend one last evening together before they left on their trip. I told him I would be there. After the call ended, I sat quietly at the table for a long time, looking at the bank records I had printed from my laptop, arranging them in a neat stack, while the reality of the situation slowly settled into place. The account legally belonged to him, which meant the bank had done nothing wrong, but the promise behind that account belonged to my mother, and the more I thought about that promise, the clearer my next step became. By the time I went to bed that night, the documents were already inside a folder sitting by the door, waiting for the dinner he thought would be a celebration. If you want to see what happened next, stay with me. And if you like stories that reveal what people try to hide, don't forget to like and subscribe. The restaurant overlooked the harbor where the cruise ship was already docked, its enormous white structure glowing under the evening lights, while passengers rolled suitcases along the boarding ramp below. My father and his wife were already seated when I arrived, smiling as I walked toward the table with the folder tucked under my arm. For the first few minutes, the conversation stayed light while drinks arrived and my stepmother talked excitedly about the balcony suite they had booked for the voyage. She described the ocean views and the formal dinners on board like she was reading from a travel magazine, while my father nodded beside her. When the waiter came back to pour champagne for the table, she raised her glass and said something about celebrating their once-in-a-lifetime trip. That was the moment I placed the folder gently in the center of the table. My father looked down at the documents with mild confusion at first, but his expression changed almost immediately when he recognized the bank statement on the top page. The table went quiet in a way that made the clinking of glasses from other diners sound strangely loud around us. He started explaining quickly that the account had always been legally his and that he intended to repay the money eventually because weddings were expensive anyway and he thought the trip was something he and his wife deserved after years of hard work. The words sounded thinner with every sentence. I didn't raise my voice or argue. I simply slid one more page across the table. It was a printed copy of the first page from my mother's old savings notebook, the one where she had written Emily's Wedding Fund in careful blue ink all those years ago. My stepmother stared at that page for a long moment without saying anything. Somewhere out in the harbor, the cruise ship horn sounded, a deep echo rolling across the water as passengers continued boarding. I stood up from the table then, leaving the folder where it was so my father could keep reading the pages he had apparently forgotten about. As I walked out of the restaurant and into the cool night air, I heard the low murmur of conversations behind me shifting into something tense and uncertain. Whether he boarded that ship or stayed behind to explain to his wife why their dream vacation suddenly felt different was no longer my responsibility. Some promises break quietly, but sometimes the silence afterward says more than anything else ever could. If you want to hear more stories about the secrets people try to hide, stay with me. And if you like stories that reveal what people try to hide, don't forget to like and subscribe.